Welcome back to the class, everyone. And just like that, 3 months have passed by, and for those of us who have been getting the max amount of shards for Beskar Gideon, he is going to be unlockable today. And since he's unlockable today, that means we need to start discussing what are the team comps he's going to go into, what Omicrons is he actually worthy of, and how do we mod and relic him ultimately. So that is what this whole purpose of the video is. We're going to go through and answer these questions to the best of our ability. Obviously, there's a little bit of speculation on all this because we have not had the chance yet to play around with him. But overall, he does look like he's going to be a good character just because he's going to give a home to the Imperial Remnants, it looks like, in TW. But in addition to that, he just looks like a really good Empire tank. So first off, we're going to talk about GAC comps and then TW comps, 3v3. We'll go over kind of why I am doing the Omicrons the way I'm doing them, and then also how we're going to mod and relic him. So starting off with the GAC compositions. When they CG originally came up with this idea for Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, which that's kind of clumsy to say, I'm just going to say Beskar Gideon, and hopefully that's understandable. When they first came up with the concept of him, it was very clear that they wanted to go through and make him useful with the Imperial Remnant. The big glaring issue with this, specifically in GAC, is that when you pull up the Imperial Trooper, not the Imperial Remnant, but the Imperial Trooper teams, you can't actually make 3 teams out of this, which becomes a problem because Aiden's GAC Omicron is very good. Veer's team has always been very good. And what ends up happening is you run out of troopers. Even if you include all, what do we have here? 13 characters plus the new Moff Gideon. 14 isn't 15. I guess maybe you can undersize, but ultimately you're probably going to want to have the better troopers in a smaller amount of teams rather than spreading them out to 3 teams and kind of having, not all that great of a quality. So what CG has been trying to do with the squad is they've been trying to push him kind of awkwardly onto this Mandalorian dark side team. And now I have 2 issues with this. Number 1, I don't want to give up Maul since I have Lord Vader, and the Lord Vader overall, his viability drops a ton when you remove Maul. And furthermore, a lot of people who either don't have Lord Vader are just doing the split because they're having great success with Mandalorians beating up until Galactic Legends, but without even having to use Moff Gideon at all. They're bringing in Jango, who actually does present some really great benefits, specifically the fact that he can be very tanky, taunt immediately in the very beginning, eat Cat's initial leap, and that way you still have all 5 of your dark side Mandalorians to unleash a ton of damage on a very unsuspecting JMK team due to the Imperial Super Commando rework. We won't get into all of that, but I'm saying you can do this. He's partially built for it. He has a revive. He has all these specific mechanics that were kind of made him supposed to work secondarily with a Mandalorian team. That being said, I'm not going to do it, and I can really understand why most people wouldn't, given those 2 reasons just mentioned. Where I am going to use him, and I'm actually pretty excited about, is in a Lord Vader team already with Maul, Grand Admiral Thrawn, as well as Royal Guard. And this reason is also twofold. Number 1, the dude is a really good Empire tank. Lord Vader has always loved his Empire tanks. Yeah, he's kind of basking in his glory right now. Lord Vader has always kind of loved his Empire tanks, but Moff Gideon is going to take it to a whole new level, specifically with how tanky his unique makes him. When you pull in together all the bonuses, it's much more than Stormtrooper or Ninth Sister, who are pretty common double tank variants after assuming, the first one's always Royal Guard. But he gains a 50% defense. I guess 100% critical avoidance is also nice, but most, Lord Vader sides are eventually critical avoided. 50% defense, that's pretty big. 30% max health and protection. And then he's going to recover protection, which that's not really relevant to the Lord Vader team. But these initial boosts here right there are going to make him very hard to kill. Not to mention his overall stats are just pretty good. For those of you who have been running Ninth Sister like myself as a 5th on the team, they're pretty comparable there. But his bonuses put him well over the amount that he needs to be considered. Essentially the 2nd best tank that can be put into the team, right after Royal Guard, who was custom made for Lord Vader. The other thing that I want to point out that that is pretty important when sticking him on that team is he is going to, even though the leader is Lord Vader and not a Mandalorian, he has the capability to revive defeated dark side Mandalorian allies with 30% health and protection, and gain retribution for 2 turns. So what this is going to allow you to do is if someone else is using like JML or a Fennec team against you, and they're going around taunt, because both Fennec and Jedi Master Luke can do that, and they're killing your Maul, and they're like, haha, I've got Maul down. That's a huge key player for Lord Vader. The battle is going well. He can just revive him now. And that, it's not guaranteed to cause a ton of issues, but it can. And that's a great thing that I would like to have on the team that really a character like Night Sister or Stormtrooper isn't really bringing to the table. He also does grant accuracy up as well as defense up for 3 turns. And I realize accuracy up sounds like a really lame buff, but you have to remember Lord Vader is going to give his whole team mastery when they get any type of buff. So I don't care if it's accuracy up or whatever it is, you're going to be gaining an added mastery that way. Again, more things that a lot of these other tanks that we would typically be putting with Lord Vader can't overall do, making him a great addition specifically for GAC. Now, when it comes to TW, the comps are going to look a little bit different. Number one, you have this specific Imperial Remnant team put together that CG kind of wants us to use, and I think they might be right. My big issue with making this specific team in GAC is if you do, then you can no longer make 2 really good Imperial Trooper teams with Iden and Veers. We kind of already talked about that. TW doesn't have such weaknesses. Iden doesn't have Omicron in TW, so that team really has never been relevant to begin with. So you have a lot of these free agents like Stormtrooper, like Death Trooper, like Scout Trooper. And I'm not going to go into like a 12-minute rant on every single thing that this team can do, but it looks pretty nasty. If you go specifically into Moff Gideon or Beskar Gideon's leadership, he has all these anti-turn meter mechanics. It looks like they'll just put any turn meter thing into the ground. Think Tuskens, but kind of on steroids. The amount of boost that his leadership gives overall to are very high. 75% defense is a lot of defense. For anyone who's been dealing with a lot of the defense-heavy Datacrons right now, know that that as a starting point is going to be very tricky to deal with. He's got some other nice things in here that he does as well, like a continual stacking of defense and offense throughout the battle that is just going to make the team very hard to kill, especially when you remember that he has units like Stormtrooper as well as Scout. And this hasn't been explored a lot, and again, we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. But Scout's kit, we don't realize it yet. Well, maybe we realize it, but we haven't experienced it. Was custom made for Beskar Gideon. There are so many caveats in here saying if the leader slot is Imperial Remnant, he does this whole new thing. And there's quite a bit going on there. So this very well might have the capability to beat a lot of the bigger things. Really don't know without any testing, and it's essentially a brand new squad. For what it's worth, if you don't want to do that, you can also do the same exact team that we talked about in TW, and there's one big reason why, or one more big reason why this I think is going to be great in TW, and it has to do with Omicrons, but we'll talk about that later. So this team is still valid. This is probably more worth your time, though. In 3v3, if anyone was curious about that, I really don't think you can separate him from Scout Trooper. I wouldn't put him with Maul just because Maul either wants Gar and Imperial Super Commando or to be with Lord Vader. There really isn't a halfway place to meet them with how limited the team comp is. So I put him with Scout Trooper, put him with someone else. I still like Storm with Iden. I still like Dark with Veers. So this is kind of the happy medium that I landed to as far as 3v3 goes. Nothing to really write home about, but it's a team, and if you're unlocking the character, that might be something fun to do. Now, when it comes to our good friends Omicrons, he is going to be different, in my opinion, than almost every single Conquest or triple Omicron character we've ever seen, in the sense that I do not believe the most important Omicron for him is the leadership ability. I believe it's this special. And it's because you're going to deal additional true damage and remove an additional 10% turn meter for each stack of Inside on Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. And this is where it really gets big. Inflict all enemies with healing immunity for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled or resisted. This is the massive pain in the butt that Third Sister under Inquisitors had that makes the team so annoying, because once they land, 2 turns of locked unresistible healing immunity, your team's just sitting duck there waiting to die because you can't heal, you can't get out of it, you can't cleanse it off so that you can get back up. It's pretty much a death sentence for the team, assuming that, you know, the enemy team actually has some type of damage to work against you to begin with. And the fact that it's not restricted to any like specific mechanic out there. Different for Reva's is overall really good, but it does require that every single enemy has a stack of purge on them. This isn't dependent on like the leader being Moff Gideon. It's not dependent on the leader being a Mandalorian. It's not dependent on the entire team being Empire. You can stick this on any team in TW where you're not breaking synergy, and boom, automatic inflict all enemies with healing immunity for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled or resisted. So overall, for me, this wins it. This is so useful if you're using it with Lord Vader. Awesome, cool. If you're using him under his own leadership, awesome, great there too. Anywhere you can stick him that he's not going to break synergy, that's going to be a huge pain in the butt. Next up is going to be his leader. His leader doesn't look bad, and by that I mean his leader Omicron. His leadership itself looks great, but it's going to be adding health, mastery, and speed, which all of those are good things, but at the same time, this very much feels like an Aphra-esque leadership, and I enjoy Aphra's leadership, but it does a lot of things that help and not a lot of things that completely change what the essence of the team is. We kind of talked about the turn meter stuff that's going on here in the very beginning and the stacking offense and defense. That's the kind of stuff that would actually change a counter from being one thing to another thing. This is just going to help them do what they do better. 75% master in health, again, is nothing to, you know, sneeze at, but it's not really, doesn't change the theme of the team. It's not like Reva's where they're constantly getting Death Mark, or Starkiller where he's constantly assisting at a turn, although Starkiller's is unique. Overall, it looks good, but I would still prioritize the special over it before going there. The unique looks, I mean, it looks bad. One of the Omicrons typically is just not good. I mean, he gets an additional 30% protection. That's nice. He gets to come back with it. He taunts for 2 turns at the very beginning. You really shouldn't need any of this if you're running the team properly in any of the comps that we've seen. But I mean, it's there. But yeah, definitely special looks very good. Leadership overall looks decent. It'll probably help him punch up just a little bit, but I don't think it really unlocks any of those additional counters. Now, finally, we are going to talk about mods and relic levels. And it's very important to make him as tanky as physically possible. And there's 2 reasons why. The first one is pretty stinking obvious. He is a tank. He needs to survive. He doesn't want to die. That's definitely something that he is pro. He is pro not dying. The other reason why he needs to be tanky above all else, above speed, above potency, above tenacity, all that stuff, is because CG worked something into his kit where is it here? Whenever he would be defeated, if he has 4 or more stacks of insight, he recovers 100% health, so kind of a savior mechanic, loses all stacks of insight, and the weakest non-galactic legend ally is defeated instead. I can understand why this could be kind of nice in some scenarios. You're getting so close to working him down. He keeps taunting. His taunt keeps coming back. His taunt keeps coming or turning into Mark because he's under Lord Vader. You just want him to die. You finally get him down, and now Thrawn's dead instead of him, and he comes back. But at the same time, I kind of would rather him die than Maul, and I don't really get to make that decision. So I would rather him just never get to that obstacle to begin with, and we do that specifically by relicking him to a very high level and making him as tanky as possible with mods. I'm really not all that concerned about speed. As you can see from my secondaries here, I've got like 9 and 12 and what is this, 10. I don't think he needs a lot of that. What he really does need is as much protection as possible, either to be protection that he'll recover every single turn, or that'll turn into health and he'll get to use it to an even better effect. His protection pool at Relic 7 is also naturally larger than health, so this just seems to be the natural thing to do. And I guess it's probably worth saying, I don't hate potency on him. He does have a few debuffs, not the healing immunity, that can be resisted, and it would probably be nice if those consistently landed, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I would sacrifice any survivability to get there. I really do think he needs to be tanky first and foremost, because again, dying isn't great, sure, but also I don't want him to constantly be sacrificing him for more important characters that his whole job is to be protecting in the first place. So those are our thoughts on the new Beskar Moff Gideon coming to game. Overall, looks good. I guess if you have Imperial Remnant built up, that could be a fun place to use him. But if not, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does in the Lord Vader comp. But thank you guys for watching. And as always, stay awesome.